Welcome in, everybody, to Scout's Eye on Football. I am Chris Landry. Good to be with you today, this Wednesday, June 9th, as we're working a lot on getting ready for the football season. So we are going to talk a little bit about a couple of things picking in the NFL and college. We're going to mix it around a little bit, talk a little bit about the wide receiver units. This is born out of a question, and we'll kind of maybe take through each of the positions. The best receiver units that I've graded thus far um, heading into this season, now that the rosters are set in the NFL. Who are some of the breakout players in college football? You know a lot of players' names, undoubtedly, but there are probably some names you don't know as much about. Who are maybe some of those guys that, because they haven't done it yet, but they have some of the traits that you look for that can be really uh, take their game to a level where they become a household. Those are some people that I think that maybe you want to know a little bit about. But we've got um, some questions we're going to get to and adjust to as well. Response to the SEC show that I did yesterday, and a couple of things there. And also join us in the chat room. No excuse to not have your question addressed here. We'll certainly do our best to get you updated on everything. A couple of items to remind you about LandryFootball.com. If you haven't joined yet, what are you waiting for? It's a great opportunity. We are starting with the previews. You're going to get, for example, in the college previews, you will get a kind of an overview, news and notes of what's taken place since the end of the season to now. You have trouble keeping track of who's coming, who's gone? Of course you are. Everybody is. We got you covered. We take you up to the time that we post. And of course, if you follow the notebook every day, the college notebooks every day, you get, as it happens, what's going on and who's leaving, who's coming, what have you. Uh, the latest recruiting news, class of 2022 and 2023, commitments and so on and so forth. Visits, which are big this month. Got all of that for you. Then we give you kind of a projected depth chart. We give you a grade of how players graded out on last year's team. So you know who's coming back that graded well, who's not coming back. It gives you that all in one, right? So we've got that for you. We've got incoming recruiting class. Give you a reminder how those players graded. A little bit of what you can expect from this class coming in and the potential impact, as well as an overview of the offense, the defense, special teams, and then the schedule. So we're looking at that. We're trying to, this is the time of the year where I try to think about things. I call it quality control because that's what we call it in football. It's quality control of what are you doing, how can you do it better, what have you. And so, I'm always trying to, I've always said, what we try to do at LandryFootball.com is to bring you inside the film room, to give you a coaching and scouting perspective. We know that in today's world, I don't even know how popular radio is anymore. I don't really know. I don't know. Having done radio for years and years, that was the only thing you had. When I was the top football analyst for Fox Sports Radio, it was us, it was ESPN. You didn't have a whole lot. Now you got podcasts. Now you got a million things you can listen to. You can listen to your favorite fan group, do a show and what have you. What makes us different? What makes us unique? Not saying better. Better is in the eye of the beholder. What we're going to try to provide for you on this show, and what we try to provide for you at Landry Football in greater detail, because we can, is a coaching and scouting perspective on the game of football, college football, the NFL, players, teams, coaches, schemes, giving you that look. And so as we do that, we kind of give you a perspective that you're not going to get elsewhere. We want to make sure that we satisfy your needs to understand as a fan. Look, if you're a fan and you just want to hear all the great things about your team, you're not going to really enjoy that. You're not going to enjoy the objectivity. You're not going to enjoy seeing things that you don't want to see. And that's fine. Just telling you this is what you get. You like it or not, this is what you get. You get the straight shooting as I see it. And then what you get is a different viewpoint. How do you want to consume the sport? How do you want to consume the game? Yeah, I would think you want to learn more about it so that it helps you become better at be a better fan. Whether talking over with friends, whether it's fantasy football, whether it's the gambling edge, we're trying to provide that for you to the point where we're trying to do different things. Those of you that caught our show that I do with Scott Seidenberg, we're going to transition a little bit since Scott is such a pardon me, a guru on handicapping and numbers. We're going to focus a lot of that show on that, with my part being giving you the football angle. Not telling you, hey, you come here and we're going to get you, 10 games and you're going to go 10-0 against the spread, tricky. We're going to explain things to get you to think and do a better job of seeing the game from that perspective for those that want that. But you're going to get a lot of good football information even if you have no interest in the gambling part of it. Because everyone kind of wants to know what's going to happen, what do you think, how it's going to be. And there's a lot of things that goes on. And with the boom of the gaming aspect, we certainly want to address it. So this is a time of year where we're looking to try to improve on certain things with this show, all the shows that we're doing, and giving you a perspective. So the breakdowns are coming. They're going to come faster and faster as the film work and they get the guys, put them out for you. You're going to be able to catch that, the pro and college game. Different aspects of the pro game and the college game, of teams and players, how to look at the personnel, look at the coaching, the grading and ranking of coaches. All those things are really are going to be at the heart of what we're going to do. Want to address a couple of things, a couple of questions. Arch Manning, we talked a little bit about that, and I will address that here. Arch Manning took his visit to Clemson this past week, as kids are doing. Had a great weekend of visit. We've discussed it on the SEC show. That, Clemson, I think if there's a front runner, it would be it. The success that they've had with quarterbacks, the success that the program brings, the the fun nature of the program. I think all those things are factors. But it's early, and there's a lot to be said. Here's what I think. I think that you for the fans that are just talking about where you would eliminate. I don't think he's going to Ole Miss. While there will be a lot of talk about interest in LSU, there's no chance that he goes there. He's not going to end up at Alabama. I think the only school that'll get serious consideration and could get in it in the SEC would be Georgia. But I don't think that's going to go very far. I do think, due to some of the relationship with Mac Brown, that there'll be a little North Carolina talk, but that's not going to go very far either. The Virginia connection, we've talked about it, with his sister and with his mother being Virginia grads. There's some interest there. Enough interest to be a consideration, but not enough, in my view, for him to end up going there. he doesn't have to commit now, won't commit now. It'll take, another 6 months, few months. I do think Clemson's a strong favorite. I do think if there's a team that could make a run, that could change things, that is in the mix, and maybe stronger than people think, it's Steve Sarkisian at Texas. I do think that's real. We'll see. Will there be one of the aforementioned teams that I don't think's going to be a factor emerge as a bigger factor? Could. Things can happen. The other thing that we've talked about before that I think needs to be reiterated, it's so early that things will change during the course of the year. Coaches, certain things on the staff that may make a school become less or more appealing than it is at this point. There's a certain level of consistency, stability at Clemson to make him a strong favorite at this point. I think that's fair. Since he's not ready to commit, and since he wants to take more visits, I don't think it really matters a whole lot at this point. So that's my thoughts on where things are going. There's a question about that. With regard to comments about, I went through the whole playoff concept and idea that was asked in a question. There was a follow-up question, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But the whole playoff conversation is going to heat up even more in July about the future of the college football playoffs. And there is a strong belief in 12 teams, but a lot of that's been leaked out to see the reaction, to see not just public reaction, but the internal presidents, decision makers, and see where this goes. What are there's frailties, there's issues with every decision that you make. But again, I'm going to go back to what I mentioned. It all comes down to money. It all is not about, quote unquote, making the college game better or worse. You can debate whether it makes it better or makes it worse. Well, it's better because it's more inclusive. More teams can play. More teams are involved in it. Well, it's worse because now it's cluttered with teams that really can't win it. And, everybody gets in that wins a conference, and some of them are not deserving. All fair points. Well, it's better because you got, a lot of teams that have hope now that didn't have before. No, it's worse because now instead of college games feeling like a playoff most weeks, they're not going to feel that way anymore or as much. All those things are valid point counterpoints. The reality is none of that matters in the eyes of the decision makers. It has always been about, and will continue to be about the money, and the money that comes along with the conference playoff games being worth more. Now, the SEC game is worth a ton. If there's a prohibitive favorite like we've had in the Big Ten with Ohio State, Clemson, the ACC, those games may not be as exciting because there is almost a foregone conclusion feel to who's going to win it. However, there's always that chance of an upset, and the winner could earn their way in. So if it's a team other than Clemson and Ohio State that can beat them, you could have a second team in, perhaps. That creates a little bit more interest than, hey, look, let's see what happens. Let's see if the game's good or not. There's a little bit more of an intrigue there. But it also takes conference championship games that have not been as exciting. And I will go to the Pac-12 because the Pac-12 has not had that elite team. Even the Big 12 has had, can anybody upset Oklahoma type feel to it. But the Pac-12 now becomes more relevant, more eyeballs, more money because the winner will get in. What they do once they get in is not at the forefront of the discussion. What is so I just think that I think that's really the whole key, and we need to keep things going there. The non Power Five, Group of Five best team. Well, you're going to have a situation where those games, who's the best Group of Five team each year? Is it a foregone conclusion? Can somebody lose their grip? Can somebody reach it? You're going to have that little bit of a feel. That's going to bring another dynamic that perhaps is going to create an even bigger, view of those games. Those are going to all be a part of it. And those are all part about creating more revenue options at the end of the year. Because you look at what's happened with the bowl games. The bowl games have become embarrassing on how irrelevant they are. If you're not in the playoffs, the other bowl games don't mean anything. It is understood, accepted as no big deal. If the bowl games are that irrelevant, what they want to do is make more of them have relevance. The others may still exist as just programming owned by ESPN, and be that as it may, we'll see how that plays out and who's in it. But now what you will create is more games that have relevance, that will bring eyeballs, that will make money. It's all about that. Now, the other thing is, have you thought about how this might tie into the future? With name, image, and likeness, and my thoughts on that, and pros and cons. With name, image, and likeness, are you going to create a situation where, I believe that this whole thought about, players are going to go and create their own market. Schools and independent people are going to almost create a business and a whole genre of trying to help these guys develop their ability to improve their name, image, and likeness. Well, if schools are going to do that, be behind it, don't you think perhaps bowl games and people involved, sponsorship? You wonder about this. You wonder how to get players to play in bowl games. What about if you've got, fill in the blank business? Sponsors. Players that show up for a meet and greet, an autograph session, what have you, get paid a certain amount of money. Is that an incentive for them to show up for the game and play in the game? Do you make rules that say you can't show up for that unless you play in the game? I think there are a lot of things that it opens up avenues of. People have developed an aversion to, this is purity of college sports. The minute you start to create a business environment, which this hadn't started, yesterday. The minute you create a business environment, folks, you're going to have that part of it that's going to drive everything. It does. It drives everything. It always has. It always will, as I said before. Back when you had one game on television on a Saturday, this was probably before most of you were alive. That was the way it used to be. That was the rule. Why did they have that? Because they didn't want to hurt the gate. And then they realized the more games you put on TV, the more people got exposed to it, interested, want to be a part of it. And then they started to put more games on. Then, we go into the, couple of decades later, and you've got the advent of cable television and need for programming, and boom. ESPN, when they first started, didn't have college football live. They signed a deal with the NCAA to tape games. So the way it used to work is you'd have your 2 or 3 games, maybe a local regional, Raycom, Jefferson Pilot type thing. And ESPN would go to the games, a bunch of games on Saturday, and do the games basically live to tape. Meaning they did the games, and on Sunday night, ESPN would have a couple of games on, because there was no NFL games back then on Sunday nights. And they would have the Alabama LSU game. They would have the, whatever, Penn State Notre Dame game. And it'd be replayed throughout the week. And it was big, because you didn't get to see the game live. You didn't have many opportunities. Well, then obviously it grew and things changed, and then we started to have, the Georgia-Oklahoma lawsuit that allowed the conferences to do their own television deals, and boom, that's where we are now, right? You got the own. Now we've got not only the ESPNs, we've got the ACC network and the SEC networks that are owned by ESPN they work together. So you've not only got ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, whatever, and the streaming, you got ACC network and SEC network and alternate channels. So all those games are on. Everybody's on. It's money. It's money. It's a way to make money. And now the feeling is, how do you make that money but still try to get certain people to reach certain people come to the games, because they want that money. They don't want to give up any of that, of course, but then they want to continue to make it. Anyway, it's all about money, and it continues to be, and that's where it's going to be. And I don't know if it's going to be 12. I don't know how it's going to play out, but it is going to follow the money, and if you follow the money, you will get the feel where things are headed. Couple questions. Appreciate Tony and Jeffrey joining us. You got a question, join us in the chat room. Jeffrey says, can you give your thoughts on Branson Robinson, running back? He plays for my old high school coach. Branson is a good back. I think he's got good vision. I think he runs under his pads with good balance pretty well. And I'm excited to see about his future. Also, Mississippi State flipped Lucas Taylor from LSU. Yeah, his role there, it kind of slipped. Pretty good get for them at Mississippi State. Jeff, hey, thanks for all you do. And oh yeah, about the newsletter. Jeff, it's kind of on hold right now. And I don't know where I'm going to go with it. And I'm thinking about it, but and certainly we're going to try to come up with something, but without going into a lot of details here that would just be boring and not make a lot of sense with context. We're trying to do a lot of different things. We're trying to do some things with this show. We're trying to do some things with the TV side of this, the online streaming TV, the podcast. I don't know. I don't know about the newsletter. We thought about doing, and I still think it's a viable possibility. Maybe we will look at it again on how to do it. The question is to try to figure out the price point, the fairness, how much. I think there are a lot of things that initially that I thought that I need to think about. I haven't forgotten about it. It's still a possibility. We're still looking at it, and we'll see. I got to get a better feel for, again, how many people would be interested. I know, Jeff, you are, and how much be willing to pay for certain things. Look, it's all about. We just talked about money. It's no different here. We're looking for title sponsors for shows. We're looking for business partnerships that's going to make this grow to where you can still get this for free, still get other information. It's a complex process, and I am someone with a football background, and certainly my experience there is like greater than the business side. And while I have some experience from a big time business level in football, this is the whole process of websites, podcasts, streaming. It's like it changes every day. I mean, it's like the minute you figure something out, it's changed. And so, anyway, that's a long-winded answer. Thank you for bringing that up. Probably need to get people to, and look, we did the draft show because one of our great chat room folks, Fantasy Football, suggested it, and we did it. And that was a little simple to do. What I probably need to do, and there's certainly nothing wrong with it, I don't want to ask anything of any of you out there, but if there's something from a perspective of that you would like, and I think, Tony, you would like that inside information, you can't get it anywhere type concept. For the folks that listen, chat room, send some feedback. If you're not comfortable doing it on the chat room and you want to send it in an email, go to contact Chris and just what would you like? What would you think's fair, and pay for it, and then whether it's worth doing, and we'll figure something out. So it's on hold until we can figure out a process. So we'll see where it goes. Tony says, wondering your thoughts on Ryan Day as a coach. He has benefited early from Urban Meyer's recruiting. Tony, Ryan Day's done a better job recruiting than Urban Meyer, believe it or not. Here's what I would say. You're looking at recruiting. The recruiting hasn't dropped off at all. Urban was a elite recruiter. In that very small area, Ryan Day is every bit as good and has proven it on the field. Urban won a title. Ryan hasn't. Is Ryan Day going to be considered and criticized like Kirby Smart is criticized because he hasn't won one? If he continues to win the Big Ten and get into the playoffs but can't finish? He hasn't done that. He hasn't taken that step. It's certainly something to look at. But one thing I will say, Urban won a title. Remember the last couple of years, you had the Purdue game, you had the Iowa game the year before that were just what we call mystery game. We used to call for Clemsoning. That also happened at Ohio State. Since Ryan Day's been there, we haven't really had that. In watching him, I have not seen that team be, out prepared, maybe situationally at times. It is really, really good. Hasn't won a title. If he doesn't win a title, then it's going to be, you're not Urban Meyer. It's going to be that. And he's in a tougher spot than, say, Kirby, because Georgia hadn't won since 1980. And it's like, Georgia, it's a Georgia joke for the anti-Georgia folks and the rivals of them. But the consistency there is very impressive to football people. And for Ohio State, though, it's a little bit difficult because of what you mentioned. And a lot of people, I think, probably think along the lines of the way you do, Tony, is, you got Urban Meyer, and you're not Urban Meyer until you win a title or two or three. Then you become elite. That's fine. You've done a good job with it, but you're not elite. So I get that. He hasn't been there that long. What he's done has been very good. And I don't think it's a case of, well, he's taken Urban's guys, he's lived off of that. No. He's recruited just as good or better. And I think he's developed and even done things at an even better level. Now, were there some real schematic issues on defense in the playoffs and the championship game? You bet. Let's see where they go from there. I think they're pretty good. Rich Coates says, do you see Jim McElwain getting in the Power 5 job at some point down the road? I don't. Not at this point, no. He's young enough to where it's possible. He's doing a really good job. He's a really good coach. Did a good job at Colorado State. There's a reason why he got the Florida job to begin with. He wasn't a disaster at Florida, but he was at championship level. I don't know that people look at him in the same way. He wasn't a great recruiter, and he wasn't a great coach. So when you get a Will Muschamp that gets another shot, say from Florida to South Carolina, Jim's a different type of guy. Now, let me say this. You say Power 5 job. Rich didn't say SEC job. He's got a lot of ties to the West Coast, Northwest, so I don't know if if I were to look and say, for example, well, if it's got to be a Power 5, you're looking at, say, a Pac-12-ish type job. Could I see that happening? Is it, could I see an opening there that might fit? I mean, Oregon State, solid Oregon. I mean, in terms of who they got. I mean, if things didn't work out at Washington State for Nick Rolovich, then could I see a Washington State hiring him? Yeah. I mean, it's possible. Yeah, you could see that mid-level to lower level Pac-12 team hiring somebody like Jim. Yeah, I could see that, and that's a Power 5 job. So that's a possibility. But in terms of what you consider anywhere near a Florida level, I mean, like in the SEC, no. I mean, he wouldn't get, he wouldn't be considered for, Kentucky if Kentucky got an opening, or Mississippi State, or no, I don't think he would. I think they would look in a different direction. Speaking of some college football and coaches, we're going to get into ranking some coaches and how you rank them and things like that. But I want to spend a little time. There's some guys that have identified that I think are intriguing players. They're not what I would call good players yet, but guys who have a lot of talent that I think could be really good players to keep an eye out for. If you're a fan of college football, remember these names, and let's see how they develop, if they develop. And in no particular order. But some guys that I think could be a really good player. The defensive end from Minnesota, Boye Mafe, is a 3-star recruit. He's not stayed healthy. He is a 6'4", 265-pound basketball player, jumping type athlete, very explosive, hard to block with unusual abilities. He's done a pretty good job rushing the passer when he's had the chance. He's played stand-up linebacker, but I think he can put his hands on the ground, and he's somebody that I think you need to pay some attention to. I think for all the talk of, and I think the best receiving corps in college football is Ohio State. You know the normal guys' names. The guy that I think you need to pay attention to a little bit more is Jackson Smith Najibi, who was not a sleeper in that in recruiting. He was a 5-star kid, but a lot of talks about Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, and that could be, if you're talking top half dozen to 10 receivers in the country, both those guys, the Buckeyes, are in that group. This kid's a sophomore. This kid's really, really good. He has got tremendous ability, and I think in the 3 receiver set is going to be unbelievable. I think he's got tremendous short area quickness, ball skills. I think he can be a breakout guy, and I think he's going to be a household name that people are going to say, oh, yeah, remember him, 5-star. Kind of like what they've been able to do at Alabama with the next guy up. I think Georgia has a couple of guys that are ready to be good players on the offensive side of the ball. Darnell Washington, the tight end. And remember, Eric Gilbert is going to be receiver. Darnell Washington's going to play tight end. He's a big, long, 6'6.5", 6'7", 260-pound, long wingspan guy that is a really good blocker. And he's got really good hands. And I think he's a Nevada kid. He's been compared physically to a look of like Zion Williamson. I mean, really, really good basketball player, obviously, with New Orleans in the NBA and with Duke. I also think on the other side of the ball, Adam Anderson, who's another five-star guy that is really graded out well when he's played, but really, really gifted athlete. And I think, 6'5" frame, can really move. I think he's going to be a really good player to watch out. On a Georgia defensive front that's very good, may not know as much about him. Out in Fort Worth, there is another receiver that I think is very, very good. Quentin Johnson was a 4-star recruit out of a high school. He's a lanky guy. He's 6'4", he's 190-ish, but he plays pretty strong. He's a really good athlete, very limber athlete. He's got the long stride, ability to go up and get the ball. The whole issue with TCU, they're well coached on defense. They do a good job developing players on that side of the ball. But the difference making from TCU being like good to elite or good to really good is the quarterback play. This is a guy that can really do a lot for them if the quarterback plays pretty good. University of Washington linebacker Idifuwan Ulufashu was a 2-star kid, not highly recruited at all. He's a former walk-on. He has played very well in studying him on tape. He's very consistent. He's really good as a tackler, and I think he's got a lot of the qualities you look for. That's going to be a really, really good player. Tony Grimes, a corner from North Carolina. He's a 5-star kid. He's ready to kind of step out and I think become an elite player that can be a matchup cover guy. He played a lot at the end of last year. Very, very accomplished with his foot quickness, his ability to come out of his pedal. Very, very good. So I think that's another guy. LSU's next elite receiver is Kayshon Boutte. I think he's got a chance. He's just a sophomore. He's got a chance to be a Jamar Chase type of guy. Just accelerates. Great top end speed. Like his toughness. Played well down the stretch. The Ole Miss game. Tough over the middle of the field. Breaks tackles. Really good. Against press coverage was really, really good. Who else was I thinking about? The running back at Texas A&M. Devon Ashani is a sophomore. And they've got some good backs, obviously. Probably an all-conference back in Isaiah Spiller. But he's a sprinter, and I think you see the ability to make plays in the open field. I think is special. Lots of broken tackles, lots of explosive runs. One of the best in the country. You always need to look at Clemson for defensive linemen, particularly young guys off of a year where they weren't as good last year. Brian Breesy of Clemson is a sophomore, 5-star kid that's a defensive tackle. And boy, was he good rushing the passer from the interior as a true freshman. Run defenses need some work. But he's 6'5", he's 300 pounds. I think he's only going to get better, and they develop guys very well there. On the same line on the outside on the edge is Miles Murphy, another sophomore for Clemson. He played right away, 6'5", 275. Graded out well against the run. Look, when he rushes, he's got some ability that flashes. They don't bring a lot of five-man pressures at Clemson. It's usually 3 or 4. He's a guy that can win single-handedly. Also on Clemson's defense, Andrew Booth, the corner. He's really impressive. I even liked him in the spring. I thought he showed some improvement there. Against Wake Forest last year, he was shaky and he, but his ability to cover downfield really improved a great deal. Zach Harrison of Ohio State's a guy you're going to hear a lot about. You're going to know a lot about. He's the next great, defensive end out of Ohio State. It's really, really good. Really talented. Good get off. Good change of direction. Good spin move. Trying to think. Alabama's tight end, Billingsley. Jahleel Billingsley is an interesting player to me. You watched him the second half of the year with all the practices under his belt. He got a lot better. He's that dynamic, speed, athletic type of guy that's going to challenge down the seam, be really good. But John Robinson at Texas has a chance to be a breakout player. He's a sophomore, mainly because of his talent combined with how I think Steve Sarkisian's going to use him. He's really good tackle breaker, good balance. I think he's got a chance to have a really breakout year. Maryland's receiver, highly recruited 5-star receiver, Raheem Jarrett. Remember, he went to LSU, but then he kind of got flipped. Stephon Diggs, former Terp, Buffalo Bill, kind of convinced him to come over, and he's done a really good job. I thought he played great out well against Penn State, and I think he's an elite receiver. For the questions about who's going to step up and injuries at Georgia at receiver, Arian Smith is a sophomore to know a lot about. He's a world-class track player, star, and I think he's a real deep threat. And with that quarterback situation, I think he has a chance to be really good. The running back at Florida State, Toafili, was limited as a true freshman. I think is really explosive, versatile, and can do the things out of the backfield that Mike Norvell and his offense like to run. I think Derek Hall, Auburn's edge player, is really good, and I think he's ready to break out, and I think we'll see him have a really good year. I'm curious to see what happens at Florida with Emory Jones. I really love the big physical, what they've done with the big physical guard, Ethan White, at Florida. I liked his reps, how he got a little bit better. He's a big-time factor in the run game. Out west again, Oregon's Noah Sewell, the linebacker, is Penei Sewell's little brother. And he takes on blocks. He's physical. He's got a lot of that mentality, just not as big as Penei was. Does Clemson have another elite receiver in Joe Nada? Really impressive kid. 6'3", 220, that big receiver mold. Those are some guys. Jaquiri Robertson. If you're talking the best receivers in the ACC, you better put him down as somebody to watch. He's really, really good. He just caught 6 passes in 2019, but he exploded last year. I think it's really, really impressive. The guy's got an ability to make plays after the catch. The guy's got ability to get open off the line of scrimmage. He's got good quickness, 6'1", 180 pounds. I think that's real interesting. Keep an eye on him. Those are just some guys. Another question that was sent in. What about, you say here, what about the rumors about Boise State going to the American Athletic Conference? There have been rumors for a while. The concern by the Boise administration, particularly on the coaching staff, Brian Harsin, who's now at Auburn, of course, was the travel. I mean, you're talking about, and I know people say, well, the geographics of West Virginia and the Big 12 and all that. Remember, there's a different purse string level at the AAC versus the ACC, or even the Big 12. It's very costly, and do you compete in all sports? That's really tough. That's really expensive. I don't know that it makes a lot of sense. If you're just looking at adding a good football programming to the AAC, of course it does. You watch it and you say, man, I'd like to see them and Cincinnati go after. That's really good. And does it make sense for them financially to do that? I don't sense that anything is imminent, but we need to watch it. For Boise, Boise's in a tough spot. They don't produce great revenue, but they've got an outstanding program. They get it. No one's maximized what they have been throughout their career, from a junior college to a Division II, to a Division I AA, to Division I. I mean, they have excelled at every level, not just a little bit, but at a high level. I just don't know where they go. They're not ever going to be a factor in the Pac-12. The Mountain West, was absorbed with the Utah and the TCU types going to the Big 12. Boise would make more sense in the Big 12 geographically. You wouldn't have to go as far. I just don't sense that's where that there's that much interest in. And if you're in you might say the AAC is the best of the G5 leagues. It's still a G5 league. Are you going to leave a G5 league to go to a better G5 league? And how much more money are you going to make to offset the cost of being able to have to travel? Do you do it in just football? I think there are a lot of things that you could explore in this new aging world, but I don't sense that anything is imminent. Some other news that we want to get to. Some recruiting news want to get to. The quarterback, Justin Martin, class of 2022, that is, 4-star quarterback. He is a Cal commit. He's a big kid. He's 6'5", 215. He has been Cal commit. Ole Miss and Michigan are still hotly pursuing. Now, Matt Corral was a counselor at a camp out west recently where this kid is, and I think he's been talking a lot, talking up Ole Miss a lot. We'll see how that plays out and whether that commitment holds on. We've mentioned, obviously, the success of certain programs and getting commitments this time of year. The overall commitments are down in terms of like the high-level commitments, comparatively speaking, than this time last year. Why? Well, kids are going to have a chance to visit, and they're going to want to use that. So we may see commitments pick up, but right now, of course, they're down. You're coming off of not being able to take any visits. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this in every position, but kind of taking a look at the receiving classes in the NFL coming back, and I'm looking at it, grading out the Bucs receiving core, and it's the grades are you look in, factor in a lot of things, but I look at what the Bucs are bringing back, and obviously Evans and Godwin and Brown. You got to throw in Scotty Miller, the speed, Tyler Johnson, The tight end position, Brayton Gronk, I think factors in. The Cowboys have a really good receiving core. And I think you know that with Cooper and Gallup and CeeDee Lamb, and I think Blake Jarwin can take a next step. Of course, Kansas City is as good as anybody's. You've got Kelsey, you've got Hill. Um, I think the biggest issue, and you could make the case for the aforementioned two teams right along, maybe a little bit better than Kansas City, is their depth. McCole Hardeman's really good. Demarcus Robinson, Brian Pringle, Cornell Powell. Um, in terms of depth, do they have as many? I think you could debate that. In terms of fastest player in the league, it's probably Tyreek Hill. In terms of pass catching tight end, you can't get any better than Travis Kelsey. But depth wise, how about the Bills? That's another team that's really good. Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, John Brown, Emmanuel Sanders, Gabriel Davis, Dawson Knox at tight end. Interesting group there. Minnesota with Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Beebe, Smith Marsetti, Irv Smith Jr. I think those are guys that are really good. Denver's really improved their receiving core. Cortland Sutton now's got Jerry Jeudy. You got KJ Hamler. You got Seth Williams, Ogumon and Noah Fant at tight end. Got some good groups. The Niners that can stay healthy. Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Travis Benjamin, George Kittle, a healthy George Kittle. The Rams have a pretty good group, I think, with Woods and Kupp and Jefferson and Deshaun Jackson and Higbee and Everett. The Dolphins have improved with Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle and Devontae Parker, Jakeem Grant, Lynn Bowden Jr., Gesicki. Really good group. I think the Seahawks, I think the Giants have really improved. Add a lot of pieces. Kenny Galladay, Slayton and Tony and Shepard and Ross and Ingram. Got a lot of guys there. We'll see what the Bengals can do. The Browns have a pretty good group. So that's kind of a look at some of the top receiving cores. Had a question about that. The top receiving core in college football, I think Ohio State, Alabama, I think Oklahoma, I think USC would probably be my top four. Sneaky would be Iowa State when you throw in the tight ends. Nevada's another one that probably off the radar that's pretty good that you might not think. And I think Ole Miss, I think Florida, I think Georgia has some potential with young guys. We'll see how they develop. On the way out of here, let's see here. What the Rich Coach says, what was your scouting evaluation of Tim Rudy out of Notre Dame? Tim was a physical run blocker, not really good feet and pass protection. Chad Brown was a big time pass rusher, and we tried to sign him in free agency. He was big time guy. He had a nothing to do with football, but he had a pet snake. What do you call those? Those big old snakes that you can have as a pet. He had one of those. Told him if he brought that thing, we were in Houston at the time, that the deal was off. But he ended up signing a big deal. He had a really good career. Boy, he could really rush the passer. Carl Pickens out of Tennessee. Carl was, when Tennessee was producing receiver after receiver for years and years, he was, obviously after the Galt and Anthony Miller, but Carl was the big, long receiver that could go up and get the ball, that had speed, that vertical speed, what I call build-up speed, before it was as prevalent as it is today. Before receivers start looking like basketball players, Carl Pickens was really, really good. Did a good job at Cincinnati, and I was with the Browns at the time when Cincinnati drafted him. So some good questions. Always some good thoughts from Rich there. Can't thank Rich. And let's see, Nola Jack, do you think Jameis Winston has had bad coaching in Tampa? Is it a narrative the local media is trying to sell? No, I don't think he's had bad coaching at all in Tampa. I think Jameis Winston is not a very good student. That's the biggest problem. Look, I think Sean Payton will get as much out of Jameis Winston as can be had. Just, you're going to have to play around him. He's a slow processor, a slow decision maker, and he's not very accurate on a lot of routes. So what you have to do is basically take a lot of routes. A lot of the slant routes, the timing routes, have to be mitigated in this offense because the ball won't come out on time and it won't come out as accurate. But he can go vertical more and he can do things. So the whole key for the Saints offense with Sean is the run game. You've got to be able to run the football so they can run play action. They can go deep. Now, play action is a little bit dangerous because you turn your back to the defense. But if you can manipulate the safeties in the box with the run game, you can, by design, give him some simple reads and let him go deep, and that can open up your offense that way. So they're going to have to do it differently. You talk about complete different way you operate the offense, and Sean's kind of energized and motivated by that. But the whole Jameis Winston poorly coached, Jameis Winston is tough to coach because there are things that he struggles with that at this stage he should be better with. I do think you'll see a better version of Jameis Winston because of what I think that they're going to do with him. And you might say, well, isn't that what you're talking about? Bad coaching in Tampa? No. I think you look at a guy that's always done good with quarterbacks and a guy that worked the vertical game as well as anybody is Bruce Arians. Look at his history with quarterbacks. It's been stellar, even with backup caliber quarterbacks in his time in Arizona, in Pittsburgh. I mean, you go the Colts before Peyton. He's done a good job with a lot of those guys. Couldn't do it with Jameis. Jameis I think Sean will get as much as you can get out of him, but he'll never be the guy that you would think that you should get out of a number one overall pick. So that's my thought there. Appreciate you, Nola, Rich Coach, Tony, Jeff joining us, everybody. Encourage you to spread the word about what we're doing here, what we're doing over at LandryFootball.com, breaking down the game of football, the college game, the pro game. We got it covered for you. Players, teams, coaches, schemes. Take advantage of the scouting season offer. Spread the word, if you would, with us. We are trying to work on different things with regard to, again, the direction of our podcast, the business ventures that we're trying to go in with, and different ideas. So certainly we appreciate your feedback, your support, and certainly join us here. We'll be back for SEC football and beyond on Friday. So check us out there. We appreciate you joining us. We'll see you there, and hope you have a great day, everybody.